In the U.S., consumer prices have hit new 40-year high amid rising inflation in the world's largest economy. The Labor Department says the consumer price index was nearly at 8% in February compared to the same month last year. That's the biggest jump since January of 1982. The rise comes as gasoline, food, and housing prices have skyrocketed. The Federal Reserve is set to increase interest rates to try to deal with rising inflation. It is expected the fallout from Russia's military action in Ukraine will exacerbate the crisis. Financial experts warn of another shock as a result of the West's anti-Moscow sanctions. And Russia is a major producer of oil and natural gas, as well as some food commodities. Joining us now for the program is Press TV's Colin Campbell, correspondent from Washington, D.C., and David Barkin, professor of economics from the University of Mexico City. Hello, gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you both here on the program. Colin, we're going to start with you. What can you tell us about, we know that inflation has been out of control recently, but it seems like it's only getting worse. What's the latest?
Yeah, we have investors that are very scared about the prospect of the scarcity of oil and them reaching their intended targets. At the same time, we have other areas of the market that are creeping up as far as inflationary costs. We're looking at food, we're looking at home repair equipment and parts, and car parts, because of supply chain issues, are also causing fluctuations in the market and causing inflationary fears as well. We have heads of state, such as in Maryland, where Governor Larry Hogan wants to declare a state of emergency so that gas taxes wouldn't have to be paid because of rising gas costs. In Virginia, right next door, we have Democrats that are fighting with the Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin to do the same, but Youngkin does not want to do that so far. But there are a lot of Democrats who are saying, as the costs of gas are rising, there should be more protections for people, so that when so that a company could not just make gas at $8 a gallon, for example, and reap all of these benefits, knowing that it could be a scarce commodity and that people will definitely need it to get around. So there are a lot of fears going on right now as we see prices going up around the nation. People are definitely crying out about the pain that they're feeling in their wallets. People are using up their savings, especially when it comes to food and other issues.
Thank you, Colin. And Professor Barkin, always a pleasure to check in with you. Hope you're safe and doing well out there in Mexico City. Professor, when we say that the Labor Department says consumer price index was at nearly 8% in February compared to the same month last year, and that's the biggest jump since January of 1982, what does that mean?
Well, I think that in your initial report, you also reported on the Federal Reserve raising interest rates. And I think that what you have to understand about what's going on right now is that the economic tools that the Biden administration is trying to use are tools that are aimed at the business community. The interest rate is designed to slow down investment, but it really is incredible in the United States, where you have contradictory tendencies. On the one hand, you have the rising prices, but on the other hand, if you have an increase in interest rates, you're going to have a decline in economic activity. Now, the question is, who are the people in the United States and in the North Atlantic area who should pay for this escalation of the armed conflict? And I think that we should also understand that this escalation is not going to just take place in the conflict between Ukraine and Russia, because the United States is presently also increasing tensions in the Pacific area. And China is warning that it will not back down, that it is not going to accept the notion that the United States impose its control over Pacific areas. And so my take on what's going on right now is that the inflationary pressures in the United States are going to continue, they're going to heighten, and that the Federal Reserve measures are going to hurt working class people because it's going to cut off productive investment.
Okay, thank you, Professor. And Colin, when I'm in Tehran, when I take to social media to see people's reactions, which I do just about every day, I mean it's wild that people are really, really feeling the pinch. My mom's in LA. She does fairly well, but she's feeling the pinch, and I couldn't imagine people, just a level, below her as far as the working class goes. What they must be going through right now, and it's supposedly supposed to get worse. So, I mean, when you check in with your peers and you're watching and you're getting people's reactions on the streets, what's the sentiment right now? How are they feeling this? How are they perceiving this situation?
Not well. I mean, there are a lot of people who are very upset and they're very worried about this because we're not sure how long this will go on for. They're already feeling stressed. They're already feeling pinched at their wallets and at the pump. They're already feeling strained when they go to the grocery store to get their groceries. Listen, it wasn't to say that the economy was doing so great before, that people were so comfortable before all of this started happening. We have to remember we are still in the midst of a pandemic. Although, yes, things are winding down and media attention has kind of slid away from focusing on COVID-19, we still have to remember we're still trying to get back to a level of normalcy. There were already supply chain interruptions because of COVID-19. There are already people straining, either leaving work or there are restrictions at work. Just a feeling of discomfort because of COVID-19, and now this is stacked on top of that. So for a lot of people, this is very painful. When it comes to California, where your mom is right now, they already pay higher gas prices because of emissions testing and different state regulations that make their gas prices higher than the rest of the nation. And as we know, California is not doing too well either, where we have record numbers of homelessness there. We have, it seems that there are reports of an uptick in crimes there, where you may have a drugstore that's completely wiped out because of theft and burglary, and they decide to shut that drugstore down because just to replenish the shelves would only encourage people to do that same movement again, and they're losing money. So there are certain situations in California even that have been going on for quite a bit of time that have not been very favorable. So when you look at the rest of the country, you can see that there are a lot of Americans who are in pain right now, and they're worried because they're wondering, is this going to last into the summer, into the fall? How long is this going to go on?
And Professor Barkin, President Joe Biden earlier said he's going to unleash, or that he has basically tapped into 30 million barrels of crude out of reserves, and that he's going to work with their allies, referring to the Europeans, to try to do something about energy insecurity right now. But it seems like it's just a Band-Aid. You mentioned that they don't really have a thorough plan, some kind of a righteous regime to deal with rising inflation. And when you add the sanctions they put on Russia, the ensuing energy insecurity that's going to basically elicit, what are we looking at in the future, Professor?
I think that we have to listen to what Colin had to say. I think that the ripple effects of what we're seeing right now are just beginning. We're going to see throughout the whole supply chain, but throughout the whole society, a series of tensions, economic tensions, price tensions, and political tensions that are extraordinarily worrying. And if you add to that the pressures that will be in the Congress, and they're going to be bipartisan pressures to increase defense spending, I think that we're looking at a very serious period of increased economic pressures throughout the whole society, throughout the whole United States economy, and that's going to have effects throughout the whole economic area of the North Atlantic.
And Professor, before we let you go, could this possibly lead to a deep recession or possibly even another depression?
No, I don't think we're talking about, certainly not at this point. The United States has the tools to avoid that. The real question is, how will the United States spend its money? Will it spend it to increase the power and the penetration of the military-industrial complex, which is what it looks like right now? Or is it going to focus on attending some of the internal problems? I think that this is a tragedy in terms of what's going on in the United States. I don't think that we're talking about a depression or a recession, but I do think that we're talking about a series of economic pressures that are going to have devastating effects on the social welfare of the lower half of the United States population.
All right, gentlemen, thank you both for joining us on the program. Stay safe to both of you. Colin Campbell from Washington, D.C., and Professor Barkin there joining us from Mexico City. And viewers, that's a wrap for this segment of your Press TV News Review program. Thank you for joining us, and goodbye for now.